News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 31st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 18 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Federal election now less than 3 weeks away. The cross-country campaigning by the leaders continues, including two of the main party leaders in our area today. It begins with a new poll that shows who's picking up steam and who's losing ground.
In the span of just a couple of weeks, support is shifting, with the Conservatives and NDP gaining ground. Their gain is the Liberals' loss. 34% of decided voters who took part in a Leger survey say they support the Conservatives. That is up 4 points. Support for the New Democrats is also up 4 points to 24%. 30% say they support the Liberals. That is down 5 points. On the campaign trail today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is making 2 stops in BC. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is in Ottawa doing 2 virtual town halls, and Liberal leader Justin Trudeau will also be in the Ottawa area with a stop in Canada. I'm Irene Precklett.
City News Time 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A gorgeous day for the last day of August. Sun and cloud, the wind out of the west-northwest, a high near 26 degrees. Tonight, mainly clear and 12, and tomorrow, sunshine with the high about 25 degrees. For today, just a slight chance of a shower, sun and cloud, high 26.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 18 degrees. StatsCan says the economy contracted by an annualized rate of 1.1% in Q2 this year, the first quarterly contraction recorded since a sharp drop in GDP in the second quarter of last year. Decline in home resale activity and exports drove that drop. Now, how are Ottawa businesses faring during the pandemic? Mark Kaluski tells City News they're doing just okay.
The thing to remember is I think a lot of the public consciousness has moved on as this is over, but businesses have taken on $80,000 to $100,000 on average of debt over the last year. They're not at 100% capacity. They're still fighting all sorts of issues of supply chain issues, of input costs going up, of changing customer tastes.
Now, the chair of the Ottawa Coalition of BIAs expects it to be at least another year before business gets back to the pre-pandemic levels. In the meantime, he says many industries are in need of upfront cash for rental support or labor costs. A reform on commercial insurance premiums and new laws around commercial bankruptcy are needed. When students return to Ontario classrooms after a year of pandemic-disrupted studies, a number of school boards say they will work to address a phenomenon known as learning loss.
Several boards say as children head back to class, teachers and board education experts will be assessing students to get a sense of how much kids have retained since the last academic year. Psychologist Todd Cunningham says students have had unequal access to online learning during the pandemic, and some have struggled more than others. He suggests educators spend a few weeks to help students feel comfortable and supported at school again, emotionally and academically, before prioritizing coursework. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press, Toronto.
City News Time 9:03. Several fatalities in the southern U.S. in the last day may be attributable to Hurricane Ida.
Near Crossroads, Mississippi, an hour west of Mobile, Alabama, a storm-soaked road collapsed late Monday, causing a multi-car pileup that killed 2 and injured 10. John Glass is the county's emergency coordinator.
Right now, the efforts are going to be to try to actually get a heavy crane into the area, but the road is still washing. So this is probably going to be about a 3 or 4 hour minimum recovery process.
Glass says it's almost certain that the washout was a result of Hurricane Ida. Jim Ryan, ABC News, New Orleans.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
From hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
The last day of August. Oh, nothing says the end of summer like the last day of August. This August was a hot one. I just counted 10 days in August with a high of at least 30 degrees in Ottawa. Last August, we had 4 such days, and in August of 2019, we only had one 30-degree day. This August, 10 30-degree days. The hottest this August was the 21st. It was 32.9 degrees before the Humidex, and so far that stands as the hottest day of the summer, 32.9. Not the hottest day of the year, though. That actually happened in the spring, June 7th, 33.2. So it was a scorcher of an August, warmest August in 5 years, according to Environment Canada. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. The news cycle is red hot as well. And let's take a look at the federal election campaign and the polls. Lots of new polling data out this morning. We have Abacus data, polling numbers. It's the Liberals in the lead. But their lead has narrowed in the last week, according to David Coletto, our good friend over at Abacus Data. Last week, he had the Liberals up by 4. Now they're only up by 1. Liberals, 33. Conservatives, 32. NDP, 22. But Abacus says among those who have made up their mind, decided voters, the Conservatives have the edge. From there, we go over to Leger. Now, Leger claims it was the most accurate pollster during the last federal election. And it says it's the Conservatives in the lead. It's the Conservatives in the lead, and it's a 4-point lead. Conservatives, 34. Liberals, 30. NDP, 24. David, NDP at 24. Whoa, getting up there. I haven't seen an NDP number that high in quite some time. Leger also says that just in the last week, 41% of Canadians say their opinion of Justin Trudeau has deteriorated. So if you're one of them, you're not alone. Still, though, when Leger asks, who do you think is going to win this thing by the time it's all said and done? Most people still think the Liberals are going to win. As for those nightly tracking numbers, nanos, Liberals in the lead. 33.2. Conservatives, 32.5. NDP, 19.2. But a much different story at Ecos. Nightly tracking, Conservatives in the lead. 7-point lead. Conservatives, 36.8. Liberals, 29.4. NDP, 19.3. And at Main Street, it's an even bigger lead for the Conservatives. An 8-point lead, 35.5. Liberals, 27.6. NDP, 17.1. So, here are the results of today's polling data. It's either a tie, or the Liberals are in the lead, or it's a small lead for the Conservatives, or it's a big lead for the Conservatives. Something for everyone. Something for everyone. So look, once more we're going to sink our teeth into this election campaign because, hey, it's the biggest show in town. I don't buy into this narrative that people aren't paying attention. When I do the talk back hour, our phones are ringing off the hook. I don't buy this at all. People aren't paying attention. I don't think you get these moves in the polls. I don't think you get these volatile polling numbers that people have tuned things out. I think way more people are paying attention than some in the commentary class would have us believe. I'll tell you what, Michael Taube is paying attention. He's very tuned in. It's his job to be tuned in. He's a syndicated political columnist, for crying out loud. Been writing for the National Post lately, Loonie Politics, Troy Media, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. With us every week. He's coming up right after the 11 o'clock news with his hot take on the campaign so far. The professor, the poor professor from the Glebe, he is back. Ian Lee, Carleton University, poor fella. Must be time to get back to work for him. But he's all over the election news of the day. He is just raring to go with his take on Election 44, Decision 2021. He is also with us every Tuesday morning right after the 9:30 news. And you're in the middle of it all. During the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show, coming up between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's an hour of opinions. It's an hour of phone calls. Just ask around. It's the hottest hour of talk radio in town. Now, yesterday, we spent a lot of time talking about the Liberals. And from what I gather, a lot of you aren't impressed with the Liberals. Gotcha there, loud and clear. Message received. Today, I want to talk and get your thoughts on the Conservative Party and Aaron O'Toole during the Talkback Hour. Look, I'll be honest with you, I am rather shocked that the Conservatives have managed so far to make a race out of this. Okay. It's only been 2 weeks. No time for victory laps if you cheer for the team in blue. There's a long way to go. Leaders' debates to get through yet. But, and I've said this repeatedly. I had no faith at all that the Conservative Party would even be competitive in this race. I had very low expectations, okay? I've said it, okay? You know it. It's on tape somewhere. If they turn out to be the big winners, you can go get the tape and use it against me, okay? Go right ahead. It wouldn't be the first time. Going into this campaign, I said, you know that. It's on tape, okay? They'll be lucky if they can hang on to what they have. They'll be lucky to win 100 seats. I think I said that about a month and a half ago. They'll be lucky if they win 100 seats. Well, they're tracking well above that right now. I would still give a slight edge to the Liberals because of their persistent strength in Ontario and Quebec. But I have been surprised by the performance of the leader of the campaign over the last 2 weeks. Maybe the next 3 weeks will offer up even more surprises. And maybe, just maybe, Aaron O'Toole can pull off, well, come on, it would have to be one of the most extraordinary upsets any of us could ever remember. Defeating Trudeau when Trudeau called the election. But anyway, what I want to ask you today is what you think about the direction of the Conservative Party under Aaron O'Toole. Doesn't it seem like a different kind of party? I want that to be the starting point for our conversation when we do the Talkback Hour this morning. What do you think about the direction of the Conservative Party under the leadership of Aaron O'Toole? He has softened the edges, is how I heard it described on the very addictive Hurley Burley podcast this week. He has softened the edges. And people who might normally pass on the Conservatives, maybe because for them it's a question of values, or maybe because of previous perceptions or caricatures of who people think Conservatives are. More people now are, I guess, telling pollsters, I'm willing to kick the tires and vote Conservative. Or at least tell a pollster, I'm thinking about voting Conservative. I'm leaning towards it. Now think about this. We have a Conservative leader in Canada who is reaching out to unionized workers. Okay, rank and file union members. He's running on a carbon tax. I'm not happy about that. But he's out there pitching it. For me, and it's all about me, he's not offering me any kind of big tax break. He's not saying I'll cut your income tax. On the tax side of stuff for me, as just an average middle-class guy, he's really just offering me a GST holiday in December. I mean, I'll take it, but on the tax side, on tax relief, it's not necessarily ambitious. He says he's not going to balance the budget for at least 10 years. Who the heck knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years? I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen in the next 10 days. He is pro-pipeline, okay. That's good, okay. He's not demonizing our number one wealth-creating industry. Nice difference from the other parties, but really nothing new for a conservative leader. On social issues, I think they're like a non-starter for him, despite the fear-mongering from the Liberals. There's not going to be any big move on reproductive rights. It's not on. It's not on. He's pro-pipeline. That's about all he has in common right now, I would say, with the previous leader. He ran for the leadership, though, remember, saying, I'm true blue O'Toole, right? And some people think they were duped. He ran as true blue, won the leadership, and he's been moving this party decidedly more to the center, maybe even to the left, ever since. So what I really want to get a handle on what you think about the Conservative Party of Canada under this leader. Is it a Conservative Party at all? You listen to Bernier, Mad Max. Aaron O'Toole's as red as they come. He's just like all the rest. He's no different than a liberal, right? Is that what you think? Mad Max is at 3% in the polls. Aaron O'Toole could be running away with this election. Do you like what you're getting from the leader of the Conservative Party these days? On the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch. to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's always a pleasure to have the chair of the Ottawa Board of Health on our program, City Councillor, Knoxdale-Merivale Ward, Keith Egli. Good morning, Councillor. How are you these days?
Not too bad.
You're hanging in there?
Yep, doing my best.
Good. Why are you in favor of vaccine passports in Ontario?
Well, I'm in favor of proof of vaccine in Ontario and in Ottawa in particular, because I think it's one of the ways that we're going to get back to any sense of normal. I think people want to feel comfortable and as safe as they can be when they're going out shopping, when they're going to restaurants, to events. I think employers want to make sure in the same way that their staff are protected as much as they possibly can be. Nobody wants to see another lockdown. Nobody wants to see another round of restrictions on small businesses in our community. And I think this is one of the ways that we can quite legitimately work to avoid that happening.
It seems in reading the letter that you have signed along with Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, I get the feeling you really do believe that the move by the provincial government in Quebec has made this all the more necessary. Why?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in a unique position. I guess the only other jurisdiction in Ontario that sort of fits the bill might be Windsor, Detroit, where you have such a significant back and forth between two different jurisdictions. So if Quebec has a proof of vaccination, which we know that they're moving forward on, does that mean our businesses are going to lose business because people who want to feel more comfortable in a restaurant or store might think about going to Quebec? In a similar way, are we going to get people who are not vaccinated on the Quebec side saying, well, I can't go to dinner in Quebec or I can't go shopping, but I'll just head over to Ontario, head over to Ottawa, and I'll do that. In either scenario, our businesses suffer. Our businesses have pressures put on them that they shouldn't. And I think a provincial mandated and run service makes the most sense. So it'll be an equal playing field, whether you're in Hamilton or Thunder Bay or Ottawa. The province already has all the information about, when you were vaccinated and how many times you're vaccinated in their COVAX system. So they have all the infrastructure in place to be tapped into to make it easy for people. And, I don't know that small businesses should be responsible for setting up those systems. I think it is a provincial responsibility, and it will give small businesses support they need in moving forward towards recovery.
Yeah. So in addition, because, you follow the news as much as anyone, Councillor Egli, you know that we're probably going to get some news on this tomorrow from the Premier. Would you also expect, along with whatever announcement comes tomorrow, more information on what type of establishments would require
absolutely
such proof of vaccination?
The devil's always in the details. We have a broad understanding that the province is going to come forward with a program. We don't know when it will go into effect, and as you say, we don't know exactly which type of business or service they're going to apply it to. But I would hope, as I say, restaurants, stores, events, gyms, that sort of thing. The businesses that have been really struggling, really trying to hang in there, they need all the support we can give them, so that, again, it's a comfortable place for them to run their business, and it's a comfortable place for their employees and the people who want to frequent their businesses. So I think the province has all the tools they need to do it, and I think, as I say, it will help us get towards that sense of normal that we've all been missing for the last year and a half.
What about it? Because there are concerns, Councillor, already being raised about such a proof of vaccination, vaccine passport, certificate, whatever term you want to use, about vulnerable people slipping through the cracks. How do you ensure that doesn't happen? Think about the homeless, the precariously housed new arrivals to Ottawa, these sorts of things.
Yeah, no. And
what do you do
very,
there?
That's a very good point. And you know, I guess a couple of things to that. You know, whatever has been instituted so far, whether, you know, things like masking, for example, there's always been exceptions built in for people, for example, for medical reasons or are unable to mask. Our social service people in Ottawa have been really good in dealing with COVID and helping their constituency through it. You know, you look, for example, recent piece the Citizen did about how in the shelters they vaccinated themselves through potential outbreaks and that sort of thing. So I think there's a collective understanding that there are people out there that will be potentially impacted, and we have to find ways to make it easier for them to make them able to participate, and at the same time, as you say, understand that there are some concerns that need to be addressed. We've done it with the masking, as I say, and I'm sure between us and the province, we'll find a way to deal with this to make it workable.
It says in the letter to the Premier, quote, allowing those who have chosen to remain unvaccinated to go about their daily lives with little to no consequence for their decision cannot be an option. What kind of consequences should there be for refusing to be vaccinated?
So I guess the issue there is, you know, you can choose not to be vaccinated. Some people are unable to be vaccinated for medical reasons. That's a very small percentage of the population. We know that there are others that are struggling to get vaccinated, and there are, you know, systemic or institutional barriers, whether that's the ability to get time off work or get daycare, or even something as simple as arranging for transportation to get from where they live to where they can get vaccinated. And public health and the city are focused on finding those pockets of people and helping them to get vaccinated. Then there are those we know who don't want to get vaccinated, have decided that that's not for them and they're not going to do it. And so, you know, like any decision we make, there can be consequences. I think back to when the whole debate was held around smoking in public places, and the decision was made, you know, you can smoke if you want to smoke, Rob, but you know, you can't smoke in a restaurant. If you want to eat a meal in a restaurant, you're going to have to forego smoking while you're in that restaurant. I can't smoke in a movie theater or in a public park.
Sure.
So, you know, this sort of discussion is not new. And as I say, we all make decisions in life, and with those decisions come consequences. And so nobody is saying, Rob, you must go out and get vaccinated. Just saying, if you're not, for the greater community good and the potential risks, there are certain things that
you won't be able to do. You won't be able to do. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Councillor Egli, for your time this morning again.
No problem at all, Rob.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Councillor Keith Egli chairs the Ottawa Board of Health. Professor Ian Lee is coming up right after the news. This is City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 31st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 19 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau says 5,000 refugees who were taken out of Afghanistan by the American forces will be coming to Canada. Right now, those people are in other countries in both the Middle East and Europe. After being flown out of Kabul, 1,250 people remain in Afghanistan who are Canadians or permanent residents. They are still to be brought out. Garneau says it's up to the Taliban now to show they will be safely allowed to leave. A new online poll suggests the Liberals have lost a little bit of support, both the NDP and the Conservatives gaining. 34% of decided voters, according to a weekend survey by Leger, said they support the Conservatives. That's 4 more than the Liberals' 30%. Support for Jagmeet Singh's NDP also up 4 points now at 24%. 2 of the 3 main party leaders are in the region today. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau in Canada for an announcement in about a half an hour from now, scheduled for 10 o'clock. Erin O'Toole is in Ottawa, policy announcement at noon, then holding a virtual town hall this evening for Nova Scotia. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So again, still ahead on the program. Syndicated columnist, writing for the National Post lately, Loonie Politics as well, Troy Media. Michael Taube. He's with us every Tuesday morning. We'll talk about the election. There is this narrative in the campaign that these protesters are actually a gift to Justin Trudeau. I will ask him about that. And as well, you will hear some commentators, and I've said it as well, and I full on expected, Trudeau will have to make this pitch, this classic Liberal pitch to NDP supporters that you have to vote Liberal. It's almost your duty to vote Liberal because you have to be honest with yourself. The New Democrats are not going to win. And in order to stop the Conservatives, the Liberals are your only chance, right? We're going to hear that. I'm wondering, does it even make sense? Would it be worth the effort for Erin O'Toole to make the same sort of appeal to supporters of, say, the Maverick Party or supporters of the People's Party? You know, you have to vote for the Conservative Party if you really want to stop Trudeau, because Mad Max is not going to be the Prime Minister. Face facts, okay? Or would that just fall on deaf ears because supporters of the People's Party view Erin O'Toole as just Justin Trudeau in a blue shirt. And we'll talk about President Biden and the political damage to his brand, given the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban. That'll be next year's election story, in addition to the Ontario election. The midterms in the United States are next fall. But every Tuesday morning after the 9:30 news, we are joined by the poor professor from the glebe, Professor Ian Lee, Carleton University Sprott School of Business. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
So look, I hate catching you off guard because we do spend some time preparing for this segment, but we do have some breaking economic news, and I think it's important that we discuss this, okay? Second quarter GDP, the figure has just been released by Statistics Canada. Nobody saw this coming. It's a reversal. The economy shrank in the second quarter by 0.3%. There was no economic growth in the second quarter. Now we're almost into September now, so it's kind of looking in the rearview mirror, and it's all about housing,
right?
And the big slowdown. There was a big slowdown in buying and selling homes, and all the activity that goes along with buying a new home or selling the home that you have, getting the real estate agent, hiring the lawyer, doing all the closing costs, getting a home inspector, all of these things, right? Yep. They're called, this is how StatsCan describes it, home ownership transfer costs. All costs associated with the transfer of a residential asset from one owner to the other, down 17% in the quarter. But here, I'm reading directly from Statistics Canada, and I know that you really trust Statistics Canada, and I want your thought on this, because I put this to economists, and they're increasingly worried. Here's what it says: since the third quarter of 2020, housing investment has emerged as the predominant contributor to economic activities and to capital stock, with residential capital stock surpassing non-residential capital stock. Moreover, the average housing investment for the previous 4 quarters was 17% higher than the average over the last 5 years. But housing investment has emerged as the predominant contributor to economic activity. And I guess so much so that when there's a slowdown in housing activity, the buying and selling of homes, it can drag the whole economy down, it seems, Professor. Right. How worried are you about this?
Well, I am worried, but for reasons that will, I think, catch you off guard and your listeners off guard. First off, of course, I don't challenge these numbers, and anytime the odd person sends me an email, I don't know what to say. They're like anti-vaxxers or people that think Elvis Presley is still alive. There are an army of statisticians, thousands and thousands of people with advanced degrees in mathematics and statistics and economics. And to suggest that these people who spend their entire lives morning, noon, all day long, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, no less than some person casually looking at the numbers and saying, oh, I don't like those numbers, is just nonsense, okay? I trust experts. I know that the auto mechanic working on my engine knows vastly more about that engine than I do. That's why I take it to a garage.
Right.
And I can go on and on. Medical doctors. We go to doctors because they know more about our body and our health and drugs than us amateurs. Okay, now to the point that I wanted to make. These numbers are accurate, but what the economists are forgetting, or they're too close up to the numbers, they're not realizing that, remember, these are percentage of the total economy. So, there's the total economy, and then there's the housing sector and the oil and gas sector and these different sectors. If other sectors are contracting or shrinking, like, oh my goodness, oil and gas, natural resource capital investment, because the government is demonizing this sector and is discouraging capital investment in cutting down trees because, that's terrible cutting down trees. That's terrible digging earth out of the ground, mining companies. We just passed 2 of the toughest laws in the world in the last parliament that the entire natural resource sector has agreed is going to radically diminish investment in this industry. Capital investment is declining for the last 5 years in this country. And we are now, Canadians with wealth are investing more capital investment outside of Canada than inside Canada. What's that got to do with this? Well, this issue. Well, housing, you can't invest in your house outside of Canada. I mean, I suppose you could buy a house outside of Canada, but if you live in Canada, you're going to buy your house in Canada because that's where you live. And so the housing sector is acquiring a larger share of the total economy because government policy and our government has been diminishing through policy investment in other parts of the economy, ensuring that housing is going to become a larger share of the economy. Does everybody understand me? In other words, we've capital investment, these stats are on the record, they're StatsCan data. Capital investment, that's money invested in new machinery, new equipment, new factories, new buildings, and so forth. It's not operating expense, it's building the business, and building pipelines is capital investment. And because government has made it very clear they want to downsize, reduce investment in certain sectors of the economy, investors have taken the signal. They've taken the cues and said, okay, I'm out of here. And so the remaining sector that is there is not diminishing because first off, we're growing.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so you get my point.
I do.
Housing is only becoming more important.
But again, this slowdown is related to all the activity, maybe you hire a mortgage broker, right? Then you hire a real estate agent. You got a home inspector. I've gone through this, right? It says once people are settled in wherever they're going to live, whether it's a new house or a previously owned home, the renovations market is still going strong.
Very large.
Okay.
That's right.
And it says because of the ability to work from home, savings from less travel and reduced participation in other activities, low mortgage rates, and increases in home equity lines of credit, spending has continued to increase on new houses, up better than 3%, and home renovations up 2.4%. But the thing is, real estate is very interest rate sensitive.
It is.
Right?
Now let me give you my second.
So what's going to happen? What's going to happen if interest rates move up and you have an economy that's dependent on increasingly on real estate for economic growth?
You've asked several questions there, and they're all very important.
Yeah.
Let me break this down and give you some big picture numbers, and I've written op-eds on this. I've written papers on this. When you drill down into the home ownership market, the numbers are startling, and this is StatsCan data, because we talk about, all Canadians, they're just over the cliff in debt. They're all going to lose their house. Well, that's not true. Let me explain. StatsCan data shows that 45%, that's almost half of all home owners in Canada, have zero mortgage on their house.
They own it outright.
They own it outright.
Wow.
And another, roughly a quarter of Canadians owe less than, I think it's 25 or 30% of their mortgage. So people listening and say, well, what are you talking about? What about all this over-indebtedness? It's the same old story as when I was the mortgage manager, my goodness, 40 years ago. Who are the most indebted people, and yes, vulnerable to a downturn, to interest rates going up? No question, not denying that. Who are they? Young people starting out, just creating their family, mortgaged up to the tilt, just like I was when I bought my first house, my garden home out in Hunt Club.
Right.
I was socked in debt up to the eyeballs. I had a car loan. I had a mortgage loan. I could barely move financially.
Yeah.
Same old. So we're talking about 25% max of the population.
You were the poor professor in the garden home in Hunt Club in those days.
I wasn't even a professor then. So I want to get this story out, though, so
all right.
everybody
Okay,
understands.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
About a quarter of the population is at risk, yes.
Okay.
And they're overwhelmingly at the greatest risk where? In the most expensive cities. Where is that? Vancouver and GTA, which admittedly, let's put that right out there, two largest cities in Canada. An awful lot of people live in the GTA in Vancouver. There's an awful lot of MP riding seats there. So it's politically very important. So I'm not trivializing whatsoever what you said. What I'm saying is that the housing market is very nuanced. It varies from city to city, and it also varies from age cohort to age cohort. Not all Canadians are at risk. I'm not at risk at all. And people of my age, by and large, are not at risk, whereas young people are at risk if there's a downturn in values, if they're mortgaged up to the tilt and they've got a 90% mortgage on their property, and the property value goes down 10, 15, 20% because what we'll talk about in a moment, then they will be underwater. Whereas if my property went down 10 or 20%, so what? It's still worth 5 times what I paid for it, I bought it for in 1980s.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting topic. I'm so glad we can talk about this this morning. Boy, this is not good news for the Liberals on the campaign, though, to have a GDP number out like this, and you're already behind in the polls, and now the economy is stalled. That's that's not good. No, we'll stop here and we'll come back. There'll be lots of time. 9:45. Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
When you've lost your breasts, you've sort of lost part of yourself. And then all at once you're losing your hair. You don't know who you are anymore. You want to feel like yourself again. So I think that the store, a mastectomy store, is essential because you've lost your identity. And then all at once you're looking for a wig, you need a headscarf, you need a camisole. There's nowhere to go, there's no one to talk to. This should be essential because there are more and more women that are getting breast cancer. I think it's 1 in 6. They're becoming younger. I have a client that's 18 years old. And where do they go? They need a place like this that the women that work there understand. They know what you're going through. It's changed quite a bit. Our hours are different. We're now open from 10 to 5. We're not as busy as we were. A lot of women are afraid to go out. They're afraid that maybe there are more people in the store. So that's why I try and let them know you are alone. There's absolutely nobody in the store except you and I. If there is a woman that she's very afraid, I will lock the door to make sure nobody else comes in. I'll put a sign back in 10, 15 minutes just to give her that reassurance. Before we would have 4, 5, 6 people in the store. We didn't have to turn anybody away. Now we do. Some clients do leave and they're upset because they're in the store. They said, we drove 20 minutes and now we're not allowed in the store. And I try to make them understand that there's somebody in here that's going through chemo or radiation. So that's sort of changed a lot, that we're not able to have more people in the store.
If we're talking about products, there's the bras that are adapted for mastectomy. The bathing suits that are adapted to mastectomy. We have special camisoles as well, and post-surgery bras. And then we have, for women going through chemo, the wigs that we have a big selection in the store as well. We have scarves. Some women don't feel comfortable wearing a wig. They prefer to wear a scarf or a hat, so we have a huge selection of that as well. We offer compression garments as well. When you're going through a mastectomy, you might have lymphedema in your arms after a couple of years, and you have flare-ups. So we have the sleeves, the hand as well that can be covered. We show each other's our scar. We talk about the treatments, how we felt, and I guess that's what they're looking for here. That's what makes us special. We have an added value in this store. Besides everything that's in the store, that's a product that can handle any problem that a client might have. Me and Linda, we've been through. We know how it feels in our bodies.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back. Professor Ian Lee, Part 2 of our conversation. He's with us every Tuesday morning from the Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. Continue where you left off there.
Yeah, I wanted to bring out a second point, which you alluded to at the very beginning, and that's the vulnerability of the economy, because there are indeed Canadians that are heavily mortgaged. And as I said, it's roughly, and some can challenge me on my stats, I may be out by 1 or 2 points, but there's no question about 45% of Canadians have no mortgage, and another 25% are very lightly indebted in terms of their mortgage debt. There's about 25% or so that are heavily leveraged, and it's just me connecting the dots here. Where do most Canadians live? Well, the GTA and Vancouver are by far and away the two largest census metropolitan areas in all Canada. Millions and millions and millions of people live there. So guess what? The majority of those people that are over leveraged are there. But my second point I want to make is this. Because I'm very clear on this, and I've said it over and over in many different venues, because our municipal councillors in the largest cities and our mayors deliberately, socially engineered a hard restriction on the number of houses built in the name of, quote, urban suburban sprawl, which is the pejorative term that they've ascribed and branded population growth with. Population grows in Canada because we believe in immigration. So do I. We bring in one new city to Canada every 3 years, 1 million people. We've got to house them. We must house them. And yet we have deliberately engineered a shortage. How can I say such a thing? Scotiabank crunched the numbers compared to the other high-income countries, and on a ratio of houses to population, we are 1.8 million houses short in this country. Right. This is not an accident. Little Martians didn't come down to Earth and create this. This was created by municipal public policy. And so this has driven up house prices because they've created a shortage. Any market where you have a shortage of grapes, the price goes up of grapes. A shortage of anything causes the price to go up.
Yeah, it is interesting. We now have kind of a bidding war underway among all the political leaders right now. Because it's election season, who's going to build the most homes? You know, the New Democrats say we're going to build 500,000. Yes. The Conservatives say they're going to build 1 million. Trudeau says it'll be 1.5 million. But the fact is, they're going to need a lot of buy-in from municipalities, right, in order to make this happen. Municipalities have so much influence on actually what kind of houses go where.
Of course they do.
So,
in fact, I will go further. Let me go further. Yeah. I believe that, first off, the policy announcements by the federal parties is, although they haven't come right out and said it and condemned the municipalities, this is an explicit, empirical policy repudiation.
Right. Yeah. They all say we will work with municipalities. In other words,
what we can do, we can't give up and say the feds have no authority or leverage over the municipalities. They give them billions and billions of dollars a year in the gas the gas tax transfer, and LRT and affordable housing. So they can go to the municipalities who have acted in such an socially irresponsible manner. Yes, I'm talking about you, Councillor Lippert. Yes, I'm talking about you, Councillor Menard. Yes, Mayor Watson. I'm looking at you. I'm pointing the finger at you. Okay. And so we've got to impose the fist, if you will, the discipline of the federal government on the municipalities who have acted in such a way. But the point I wanted to get out, I still haven't got it out yet.
Get to it then.
I will. Not only was the creating shortage wrong, and of course it discriminated against young people and immigrants, but it created a more vulnerable economy because it is the risk in real estate that driving the price up has made it much more vulnerable to high interest rates and a decline in real estate values when we finally do bring it back into balance by building 1 million to 2 million more houses. Let's put this as bluntly as possible, everybody. If we do what we should do, we're going to cause house prices to decline.
Yes.
You drop 2 million houses onto a Canadian market that has 15 million homes approximately. Yeah. You're going to move the market. I didn't say it's going to collapse by 50%, but anybody who thinks you can drop 2 million homes, which I strongly support, on a 15 million house market and not cause anything to happen with the house prices doesn't understand real estate prices and supply and demand. So what we have to do is the right thing to do, but it's going to cause yet more pain and suffering in the short run, and that's attributable to the original irresponsible decision by our municipal leaders at the electoral level over the past 5-10 years to deliberately restrict the supply of housing demand.
Okay, so I want to ask you about the Liberal candidate running in West Coast riding Vancouver, Granville, okay? Which used to be represented by Jody Wilson-Raybould.
Yeah.
He is under fire for, and it was our sister station, News 1130 in Vancouver had the story, flipping more than 20 properties since 2005 for quote-unquote millions of dollars in profits.
Right.
Okay? Buying and fixing up homes and then selling them for a profit is not illegal. There's nothing wrong with that. Make good money at it, as a matter of fact, apparently. Do you think this person did something wrong? Or is it just politically wrong right now?
It's politically wrong. It's a terrible optics as a candidate in an election for doing that, especially in Vancouver, where the councillors have created the worst crisis in all Canada by deliberately restricting, and this is on the record. This isn't Ian just saying this. These policies of restrictive growth are very transparent. There's no secret to this, but it was really done politically. But let's go back to the original statement. I mean, the word flipping has developed a very negative connotation. Buying a house and gutting it for months on end and spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and then adding enormous value because you turned a dumpster into a nice house, is not a bad thing. It may be to Liberals and to NDP, who are against growth and don't believe in the idea of value creation. I have owned this house for 33 years. I have a contractor here now as I speak. I've done some renovations in this house every year to improve it because it was a very old house and it needed old windows, needed replaced, and old doors and old plumbing and on and on and on. Renovating the housing stock to make it a higher quality with newer, more efficient materials, better efficient windows is not a crime to those progressives who think it is. They're demonstrating they have no understanding of real estate. Renovating old housing stock to bring it up to modern standards so people can live in it is something we should be celebrating, not condemning.
Okay. Interesting.
Shout out to all home renovators and contractors listening. You are hard workers. You're doing a good job.
Indeed, yeah.
Keep your pickup truck, even if they want to take it away from you.
Well, they're run off their feet. They're very busy these days.
They are, and they're doing good work. They're increasing our housing stock in the second coldest country on planet Earth, according to World Bank average winter temperatures. Only Russia.
And there's not nearly enough of them. There's not nearly enough of them.
And we got to live somewhere in the winter. We're not going to sleep outside in a tent.
Yeah. Big labor shortage in the trades.
There is, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah. All right, Professor. Boy, you're on fire. I don't know why. I don't know why we spend all of this time communicating. Oh, let's talk about this, and let's talk about this, and let's talk about this, and then we have one little news item, and it takes off like that. Well, it's very important.
Attention in this election.
Yeah, it's very important.
No question.
Okay, thank you, Professor. We'll talk next week.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, bye. Sprott School of Business. That is Professor Ian Lee. The Talk Back Hour. Yesterday, we took a good long look at the Conservatives and the troubles with the Liberal campaign. We took a long look at the Liberals and the Liberal campaign and the troubles that they're having. I want to ask you for your take on what you think about how Aaron O'Toole is doing, and even more so than that, the direction he's taking the Conservative Party in. That'll be our launching point for the conversation during the Talkback Hour, which is right after the news at 750-1310 here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 31st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 19 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Canada's immigration minister has announced an agreement to resettle 5,000 Afghan refugees. Marco Mendocino made the announcement during a virtual briefing today.
As refugees who supported our efforts look to move to surrounding countries, we will work in close partnership to support. As part of this agreement, Canada will welcome 5,000 refugees evacuated by the United States.
Now, the announcement comes a day after America's tortuous, tragic withdrawal from Afghanistan finally ended, but leaving hundreds of stranded Afghans still waiting to hear good news about their application for passage to Canada. Our Foreign Affairs Minister, Marc Garneau, says there are still 1,250 Canadian citizens or permanent residents in Afghanistan. He says it's up to the Taliban to allow those people to safely leave the country. If you would like to help any of the families that are being relocated here, follow the link to Refugee 613 at ottawa.citynews.ca. City News time 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A gorgeous day for the last day of August. Sun and cloud. The wind out of the west-northwest. A high near 26 degrees. Tonight, mainly clear and 12. And tomorrow, sunshine with the high about 25 degrees. For today, just a slight chance of a shower. Sun and cloud. High 26.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 19 degrees. StatsCan says the economy shrank at a rate of 1.1% in the second quarter of this year. This is the first quarterly contraction recorded since a sharp drop in the real GDP in the second quarter of 2020, and that was due to the first wave of COVID-19 lockdown. StatsCan says the main drivers were declines in home resale activity as well as exports. Now, Canadian consumers are taking advantage of the rising value of real estate with record-breaking increases in the value of home equity lines of credit. More from our senior business editor, Mike Eppel.
Home buying activity has led to a massive jump in mortgage debt levels. Equifax says new mortgage loans soared 60% in the second quarter, the biggest year-over-year increase ever recorded, to a total amount owed now by Canadian consumers at $2.1 trillion. And those who already own properties, well, they're borrowing against those houses with home equity lines of credit, HELOCs, rising more than 50% over the past year. It's not an issue right now, but Equifax says it'll be a problem if interest rates rise faster than expected, as many of the HELOC programs are tied to variable interest rates. And if interest rates go up dramatically, over-leveraged consumers might not be able to cover the monthly costs. At the Business Center, I'm Mike Eppel.
City News time 10:04. We are in the fourth wave of the pandemic. Ottawa businesses bracing for another tough year. The time frame that Mark Kaluski says it will take for shops to get back to their pre-pandemic levels. The chair of the Ottawa Coalition of BIAs tells City News that businesses are doing just okay right now, but more help is needed.
For a lot of industries, they still need cash. You know, some have been fine through all this, and I think a program that helps with the rent, helps with the labor costs, in certain industries that have been more hit than others, that's definitely needed.
Now, he says they're also dealing with a labor shortage along with insurance premiums for commercial businesses that he says have gone through the roof. Kaluski adds that the consumer confidence is struggling right now, and these supports would be a step in the right direction. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And the Conservatives are in focus today at 750-1310. What do you think? This is our launching point for the conversation today. What do you think of the direction of the Conservative Party under the leadership of Erin O'Toole? What do you think of the direction of the Conservative Party under the leadership of Erin O'Toole? Is it, for example, is it conservative enough for you? Or is it not conservative at all? Has he moved the party too much to the center, too much to the left? Does it look like a liberal party to you? Or Do you like what you're hearing from Aaron O'Toole? And this version, his version, of the Conservative Party of Canada. I'd be interested to know, more than 2 weeks into this campaign now, less than 3 weeks to go, your impressions of this Conservative Party of Canada under this leader. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. I mean, if the polls are to be believed, I mean, the race is certainly tightened. At the very least, it's a tie nationally. Maybe the Liberals have a 1-point lead. Maybe the Conservatives are in the lead and it's a small lead, or maybe it's a big lead. And even if it's a big lead, maybe it's still not enough. Imagine the Liberals get something like 33%, the Conservatives get 37%, and the Conservatives still lose. But, and maybe that happens. I still think the edge goes to the Liberals right now. Maybe the Liberals have enough support where it matters most, right? Ontario and Quebec to sneak through there and hang on to a minority government. But as of today, it would seem that I think it's a safe bet right now that the dreams of that coveted majority that Trudeau wants very much in doubt. I think that's how things are looking pretty much this morning. But let's face it, tighter race than most political junkies ever thought it would be. I mean, it was always billed as Justin Trudeau's race to lose, and over the first couple of weeks, the Liberal campaign seems to be doing its best to make sure Justin Trudeau loses. Leaders' debate still to come, though. Very important. Very important. Wait till after Labor Day. I keep hearing that. Wait till after Labor Day. That's what I keep. People are barely paying attention. I don't believe that. More people will be paying attention after Labor Day. We'll have a better idea of where things are going after Labor Day. Well, I guess we'll see. But I think you can sum up the race like this. So far, the Conservatives are exceeding expectations. The Liberals are underperforming, and the NDP is doing a little bit better than it was 2 years ago. One poll has them at 24% this morning. Greens are non-existent, and it remains to be seen what influence these upstarts, People's Party, Maverick Party, will have on the eventual outcome. Yesterday, we talked a lot about the Liberal campaign, why it struggled out of the gate here. It made for great conversation. You had a lot to say about the Liberals. I did sense, I must say, a certain amount of satisfaction, actually, with the early troubles being experienced by Team Trudeau. Because, hey, they called the election. And a lot of you think they called the election because, well, for no other reason than they thought they had the winning conditions. That might still be right. But what a collapse this would be, right? Collapse of epic proportions if they ended up losing it all. But we're a long way from that happening right now. Today, I want to talk about the Conservatives. I want to talk about the Conservative leader. I want to talk about what the party is pitching, what the leader is offering to you. Because it's Aaron O'Toole who has, I think, surprised a lot of people to the upside so far. Now, for someone like me, that's not hard to do because my expectations for the Conservatives in their campaign were very, very low. And the Willy Wonka ad, which seems like months ago now, the Willy Wonka ad, that just said it all for me. I'm like, oh, these people are not ready for prime time. Where are the adults in the room when this kind of stuff is going on? But hey, I have to say, since then, not half bad. But we're not halfway through yet. And I was thinking last week, David, there are going to be screw-ups. You know, somebody's going to get caught doing something or saying something. There are going to be Conservatives who get into trouble, do dumb things, say stupid things, and they'll be amplified on social media. And the Liberal attack machine. So I'm not shocked that Cheryl Gallant's name has come up at all. For me, you could set the alarm clock to that. Cheryl Gallant, what do you say? All she does is win elections and makes it look easy, by the way. But look, she's an outsider even in her own party. Okay. And probably, I would suspect, more so under this leader than under the previous two leaders of this party. To me, this is how I kind of look at this whole Cheryl Gallant thing. She's someone that the conservative brass will tolerate because they know she's going to win. And when she wins, they'll go back to making sure she has no significant role to play. And is pretty much never heard from again. Until the Conservatives need to win Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke again. But for the most part, the Conservatives, so far, they managed to keep a lid on the bozo eruptions. They are down a candidate in the Halifax area because of an allegation of sexual assault. The candidate denies it, but he's out. The Liberals are having their own issues with this candidate on the West Coast in Jody Wilson-Raybauld's old riding, housing affordability, Vancouver area, huge issue, right? All the parties are talking about that. And this guy's made a fortune flipping houses. He's flipped 42 homes since 2005, half of them sold within a year of buying them. Now, Professor Ian Lee says there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the second story that our sister station in Vancouver had about that. The first story involved a smaller number of properties, and he denied he was a flipper in the first place. Now he's a full-on flipper. Which is, I guess there's nothing untoward about it, nothing illegal about, buying a house, fixing it up, and selling it again and making money. Totally legitimate way to make money, but... the price of houses in Vancouver, a hot political issue, and the Prime Minister is going across the country calling that very activity predatory. So is the Liberal candidate in Vancouver Granville a predator? Talib Nur Mohammed is the candidate's name, ran for the Liberals there last time around, but lost to Jody Wilson-Raybould running. She was running as an independent. But what I want to do... 750-1310. I'm surprised we have lines available there on this topic. With your help, ladies and gentlemen, I need your help. I want to get a sense of the job you think Aaron O'Toole is doing here. And I really want to know what you think of the kind of Conservative Party that he's offering to voters in this election. Do you like it? The voters so far don't seem too off-put by it. If anything, they're willing to give the party and its leader a look. But is it conservative enough for you? Or is it too middle of the road for you? Is it too centrist, too mushy, too liberal? It's the Conservative Party of Canada. Is it conservative enough for you? Aaron O'Toole's Conservative Party of Canada. How would you answer those questions at 750-1310, 750-1310? Dave, West End, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
Rob,
yes.
O'Toole sounds like a business manager. He sounds like a man that's actually going to run the country as a business.
Okay, all right, okay.
Now, you asked for my impression, right?
Yeah.
I put the two of them side by side, okay?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
O'Toole is a man.
He's a man, okay.
Do you know what I mean by a man?
Like a man's man kind of thing.
Yes, he's got stature. He's got likability, okay?
Okay, like substance, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Now, to be kind, Trudeau standing beside him looks like a boy.
Like a boy, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Like a boy. Now, to be mean...
Well, don't be. You don't have to be mean.
Yes, I'm going to be mean.
Well, why are you going to be? Why are you going to be mean? Why do you have to be? Why do you feel? Why do you feel the need to be mean, Dave?
My impression is Trudeau looks like a boy.
Yeah.
But he acts like a flake.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I don't even know, Dave. When you make comments like, what does that contribute to anything? When you say stuff like that,
because he's nothing.
Yeah. Come on. Ian, Brockville. Ian. Good morning, Ian. You're on City News.
Rob.
I'm fine, thank you. What do you think of the direction of the Conservative Party under the leadership of Erin O'Toole? Is it, for example, is it conservative enough for you? Is he moving it too much to the center for your liking, too much to the left for your liking? What give me your sense of it right here. Or do you care as long as he beats the Liberals?
I'm going to say it's conservative enough for me for one reason, and that reason simply is, Rob, we've always had this issue with the far right and the far left. And as somebody who in 29 years of existence, not all of it being very much involved in politics, I haven't always seen a lot of good. I've seen more bad come out of the left than I've seen good. Now, don't get me wrong, because there's bad that comes out of the right, and we can all agree that. I'm sure my full right-sided guys aren't going to like that I'm saying that, but at the end of the day, like you said before the election even got called, like, O'Toole, like, what are you doing? Like,
what are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as someone who does not want, and I'm seeing it, the vast majority of the population is kind of agreeing with this too, who doesn't want to see this, how is the best way to put it? My buddy who owns a chunk of land, who, if the Liberals come into play, my buddy can't just leave that land vacant very easily. Like, the simplest of things that left-handed side likes to foul up. If O'Toole comes in and he decides that he's going to play a bit more centralized, as much as his full-fledged right guys aren't going to like it, I think that leaves a very big opening of opportunity for us to maybe sell some of the not so far left, but definitely not right-sided people that, you know what, there's a lot of pluses that can come out of the Conservative Party. And last but not least, Rob, here's where I always leave it. I wasn't overly big into politics when Harper was in power, but as I always tell my friends who say, are you not worried about another Conservative government? Am I worried about seeing all the service stations on the side of the highway getting torn down and rebuilt because we need to put Ontarians back to work? Am I worried about the signs in front of all the historic train stations as we tear them down and rebuild them with the same bricks that were originally there because we're putting guys back to work? At the end of the day, Rob, do I have an issue at all with somebody who wants to come in and just try to better our country? Because it's really not hard to do at this point in the game. No. So I think he's doing an awesome job, Rob, and I think
awesome job.
Keep it up, but be very careful with how he's going about it, but keep doing what he's doing.
All right, Ian, thank you for your call. A couple of lines here. City News, Talkback Hour. Our focus is the Conservative Party and the direction of the Conservatives under Erin O'Toole. 750-1310, Rob Snow Show, City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned. We have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. At that time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And people, and for us, we have to be careful, especially with the virus going on. Did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. Earthquake might happen. We joke about it before. Think it might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive? That's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in a mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when come to clothing. It's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really wanna shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You wanna be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know. You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
The Conservatives are in focus this morning here on the Rob Snow Show. What do you think of the direction Aaron O'Toole is taking the Conservative Party since he's become the leader? Is it conservative enough for you? Is it a Conservative Party in name only? Has he moved the party too much to the left, the center? Does it look like a liberal light? I hear that sometimes, liberal light. Or do you like what you're hearing? Do you like what's on offer so far from Aaron O'Toole? His version of the Conservative Party of Canada at 750-1310, 750-1310. I've certainly been thinking, as I've been watching this election campaign unfold, I've been thinking about this evolution of Aaron O'Toole. He ran for the leadership the time before last and finished third. Remember, it was down to the wire between Bernier and Scheer, and O'Toole finished third. And when Scheer exited the leaders' role after the 2019 election, O'Toole threw his hat into the ring again. Remember, Poilievre was in briefly, and then he was out. And a lot of Conservative members called me and wanted Poilievre to run and win. And they weren't particularly enthusiastic about any of the leadership choices. They wanted people like Rona Ambrose or John Baird. But they said no thanks. So it came down to a choice between Aaron O'Toole and Peter MacKay. And when I was doing shows during the leadership race, some members of the Conservative Party liked MacKay, thought he would have a better shot against Trudeau in a general election. But just as many said that they preferred O'Toole. And the main message that I was getting from Conservatives on why Conservatives preferred Aaron O'Toole over Peter MacKay was because MacKay was too mushy. He was too middle of the road and had too much baggage. Liberal light. I heard that too. And O'Toole was pitching himself as true blue, right? And that appealed. Imagine this. That appealed, being true blue. Imagine this, David. That appealed to Conservatives. Imagine that.
It's funny how that works.
Almost like they had game planned it or something.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's a thinker.
Yeah. So he won, and in the end, it wasn't even that close. He got a lot of that down ballot vote. If he wasn't people's first choice, he was enough people's second choice, and that made all the difference in the world, right? But is he true blue now, or is true blue kind of faded to another color? What do you think? 750-1310. Chris in Canada. Chris.
Good morning. I like the way he's drifting a little towards the center. The only comparison I really have is you take a neighborhood at Halloween, and you have one house that always gave chocolate and chips, and as the years go by, less and less kids showed up. So then they start adding vegan treats and nut-free treats and pieces of broccoli, and suddenly you're drawing more kids to your house, and I think that's exactly what they're doing, but they're doing it smartly.
Okay. All right. Interesting take, Chris. Thank you. He likes what he's getting from O'Toole. Okay. 750-1310, 750-1310. The secret is vegan snacks. Rob in Richmond. Rob. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes. What do you think of O'Toole's Conservative Party and the direction that he's moved this party?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
All right. Okay. Why do you say that, sir?
Well, I am what I would consider a red Tory.
Red Tory.
And always have been.
Okay.
So I like his message, but I'm really worried about in the last 10 days, the Liberals will start the social conservative attacks. And I think he has to be able to stay on message throughout that, because that's what's going to happen. They are going to start, they'll bring up abortion again.
Mm-hmm.
They will bring up something to do with racism for sure. So I think we all have to be very, very careful.
Well, I mean, I think the whole campaign kind of walked into that one already. I mean, they have a 160-page campaign document and it doesn't say racism once. I mean, if I'm say in the Liberal war room, I'm taking that document and I'm doing Control F, okay, and I'm typing in ism, right? Systemic racism or whatever the case might be. You know, you have 160 pages, you don't mention racism once. Well, that's an unforced error on your part, right? And of course your opponents are going to pounce on that. So, yeah.
That's what they will do. They will start attacking in the last 10 days, depending on how the debates goes.
Okay.
Now, he has to be able to hold his own during the debates. If he can do that, we have a shot. I mean, I live in a safe riding, so I'm not... But in order for us to flip some seats, he has to stay on message and stay to the center. Don't stray left or right. Stay in the middle.
So what riding are you in? Are you in Pierre Poilievre's riding? Because I would consider that to be the only safe riding. But, you know, you take... I mean, as Randall Denley said on my show last week, the columnist with the National Post and the Ottawa Citizen, you look at the neighboring riding like Canada Carleton, right?
Right.
I mean, that's one you really should have if you're going places for the Conservative Party.
That one,
you know, you used to have it. You don't have it anymore. You should try and win that back.
That one flips back and forth quite a bit.
Yeah.
I believe with Stephen Harper, that was the ex-general's riding.
Yeah, Gordon O'Connor had that riding.
Right.
I mean, the boundaries have changed, and it's more suburban than it is rural now. But nevertheless, you know, is there any reason why Conservatives shouldn't be able to win in suburban Ottawa? Absolutely not. In my opinion.
The only way, they have to stay on message.
All right. Okay, but generally you're optimistic about the direction of the party, you're saying?
I am optimistic.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so far I'm not hearing a lot of people say, no, he's turned his back. He's offering a carbon tax. What's conservative about the Conservative Party? Interesting. 750-1310. Our focus is Aaron O'Toole and where he's taken this party. Love to hear from you on City News.
This hour of the Rob local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 31st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 21 degrees. It does feel like 25, and here's what's making news this hour. Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau says an estimated 1,250 Canadian citizens or permanent residents and their family members are still in Afghanistan following withdrawal of the U.S. troops. Garneau revealed the figure during a media briefing this morning. He and the Immigration Minister, Marco Mendicino, announced that Canada has agreed to accept 5,000 Afghans evacuated by the United States to camps that are outside of Afghanistan. There are 525 more COVID cases in Ontario today, the province reporting 5 more deaths, but also says 3 of those deaths happened over 2 months ago. 10 of these new cases are in Ottawa. Eastern Ontario has 3. No new cases in either Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, or Renfrew. The case numbers come from just over 19,600 tests. The positive rate, 3.1%. School boards will have to pay early attention to individual needs when the students return to classrooms, for the most part, just over a week from now. They say the effort will help address a phenomenon known as learning loss. Several boards say they will assess students when school resumes to get a sense of just how much children have retained since the last academic year and where they need the most support. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Conservatives in Focus, Talk Back Hour. The election campaign. And the Conservatives' surprisingly strong start. What do you think of the direction the Conservative Party's taken under the leadership of Aaron O'Toole? Is it conservative enough for you? Conservative at all? Has he moved too much to the center for your liking? Maybe too much to the left? Liberal light is a frequent complaint. Or do you like what you're hearing from Aaron O'Toole? Not as hard-edged as the previous leader, for example. This version of the Conservative Party of Canada, his attempt to build a bigger tent, if you will. He doesn't want to be hounded, it's clear, by all the same attacks that hounded Andrew Scheer. And to that end, his team has put things in the window in a deliberate attempt to appeal to younger voters and to female voters. So they have something I guess the most common complaint that I hear, and I more or less share it, is who is Aaron O'Toole, and can you trust him? Okay, while he was running for the Conservative leadership, he said, "I'll never have a carbon tax. I will never have a carbon tax," and he said that over and over and over again. Now he has a carbon tax, right? He's pitching a carbon tax right now. He doesn't call it a carbon tax, just like Mr. Trudeau doesn't call his carbon tax a carbon tax. Mr. Trudeau calls it a price on pollution. But O'Toole said, when he was running for the leadership over and over and over and over again, okay, when the only votes at stake were Conservative votes, I will never have a carbon tax. And yet here we are, federal election, Conservative carbon tax, right? Just like all the rest, with some subtle differences. True Blue, hey, the more socially conservative candidates who were in that leadership race, Leslyn Lewis and what's his name, Derek something or other, they helped put O'Toole over the top. They did. We all know it. Most of their supporters went to O'Toole, then McKay in the later rounds. And then, just like Patrick Brown did in Ontario, he disowned the social conservatives. No attachment to them whatsoever. Disowned them. Came out very clear, I'm pro-choice. He doesn't come across as particularly religious. I've never heard him talk about religion. I don't know if that's by design. I don't know if he goes to church. I don't even know whether that matters, going to church in the year 2021. It used to matter, It doesn't matter anymore, I guess. And you remember the stinking albatross. You remember that comment from Peter MacKay? Andrew Scheer had the stinking albatross around his neck. Seems to me that O'Toole is trying everything that he can to make sure he's not weighed down by any kind of stinking albatross. But hey, 2 weeks into the election campaign, look at the polls. But what's conservative about this Conservative Party? What do you think about the direction he's taken this party? If you identify as a conservative, what do you think about where this party's going? If you're more on the, the left side of things, what do you think as well? Do you feel like, hey, is it getting crowded in your natural habitat? 750-1310. Helen in Westboro. Good morning, Helen. You're on City News. What do you think about the direction O'Toole has taken this party?
Well, it's the direction that I feel about conservatism. O'Toole is fiscally conservative and socially moderate.
Okay.
And that's what I like about him.
Okay. So you think he's doing a good job then?
I think he's doing an excellent job.
Not moving it too much to the center, too much to the left, more like a liberal light party to you? You're okay with this?
I'm
this sort of
okay
thing?
with the direction that he's taking. And as far as not having racism in his platform, when Trudeau finally releases his platform, we'll see how often he has feminism and women written in it and how he really does treat women. You can ask the people in his party how he does treat women. So I'm very happy with the direction of Erin O'Toole, and I'm optimistic. I hope he wins.
Okay. All right, Helen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Ottawa South. Ed in Ottawa South. Good morning, Ed.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too.
All right. Now that we had the pleasantries out of the way, what do you think of the direction of the Conservative Party under the leadership of Erin O'Toole?
I definitely think he should move towards a bit more to the center. I echo the opinions of your previous callers. Listen, at this point, it's a numbers game, and a lot of his demographics, Trudeau's demographics recently have been Canadians and the youth, university students. So he needs to kind of introduce policies that would take away from Trudeau's demographics so that he could garner support for his party. So I have no problem with the way with the direction that he's taking the party. Canada is evolving and growing, and so should the Conservative Party itself. Should it feel that it needs to govern in this month's election?
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The evolution of the party, and it's an evolution of the party. To Renfrew. Reagan, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. What do you think of the direction of the Conservative Party under Erin O'Toole?
Well, my personal opinion is, of course, I'd like to see him go a little more right, but on the same token, he's financially responsible, and he's far ahead of everything else that's offered on the left. So, we've got a country of lefties, middle, and right, so he has to govern. But what I would like him to do more is, and I think particularly in the last 10 days, is give a little more detail. Like, for example, have a lot of talk about healthcare. Well, it's as beneficial to union people with benefits having a second two-tier health system, which we have anyway, but just more in detail, like even from a perspective of the baby boomers, like the millennials and the Gen X's. Once the baby boomers are retired in 4 or 5 years, our taxes, you're going to pay our taxes. You're going to pay double the taxes we do now. So you need somebody responsible, and that's about it, Rob.
Okay, thank you. Okay, keep it going here. Irene in Ottawa. Good morning, Irene.
Hi.
What do you think? It's great to hear from you. What do you think about the direction Erin O'Toole is taking the Conservative Party?
I like it. I find he seems to be the only grown-up in the room. Between Jagmeet Singh and Trudeau, I mean, they haven't got a clue what it's like to they don't understand about affordability for the rest of us.
Okay.
That's what I find with them.
You think he has a better understanding of what it's like to pay the bills and just kind of
bills.
Yeah.
And,
okay. All right.
Another thing I'd like to bring up though is I've been reading an awful lot of Warren Kinsella's columns in the Sun, And boy, oh boy, he doesn't like Justin at all.
No, he's turned on the Liberals, on this version of the Liberals.
This one person, when he called him Justin Trump the other day, I thought, wow, he got that right on. But another thing I'd just like to throw in there too. I thought, when leaders, like, they usually have a theme song, when they come in the room or go to.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that Trudeau should go with that Frank Sinatra song, "I Did It My Way."
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Irene. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Right.
Yep. 750-1310, 750-1310 with the Conservative Party in focus. To lovely Chelsea. Craig, you're on City News. Good morning, Craig.
Hi, Rob. I guess similar to a few callers you've had recently, I'm not entirely happy with him, but he's better than the alternatives for me. I'd like a little bit more conservative. I keep hearing him talk about, we're going to spend money on this and that. I'm not entirely clear yet on where the money's coming from for all the promises, but anyway, he seems more fiscally conservative than any of the other options or any of the other viable options.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that. Do you mind if I make a comment about a previous call, though? Quickly?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yep.
That idea of giving out broccoli to get more kids at Halloween, that's the worst idea I've heard of. I don't think it's going to work.
Okay. Yeah. Vegan treats. Okay. All right, Craig. Thank you.
Hey,
thank you. Okay. Yeah. It's about building the tent, right? Broadening the appeal. John in Canada. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Your opinion on the direction of the Conservative Party under this league?
I think it is good because one of the first things that Aaron O'Toole said, I'm going to broaden the umbrella for the Conservative Party, that it can include more and more people.
Yes.
And what I'll just say, I'm a social conservative. In fact, I work with immigrant brothers of the Islamic faith. I'm a Christian. We're brothers in faith, and we're social conservatives. I'm not saying they're going to vote one way or the other, but I'm saying he's broadened it to include. He's the one person that you can be a social conservative, yet you can have compassion and understanding and respect for your growing Canadian family of all different faiths. We share a lot of social conservative values, yet you need to have an umbrella big enough to not just exclude one whole part of your society,
right,
but include everyone. And so that's what I like, him moving to the center and broadening that umbrella. And let's have physically responsible government, and he's the one that looks like he's the man that's among boys.
Okay. Thank you, John.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. That's a theme that keeps coming up. I keep hearing that he's the adult. He's the grown-up. He has managed to make it a race. Yes, he has. I wonder if even Liberals would give him some begrudging credit. There's no doubt so far the Conservative campaign's been the superior campaign. It's been a shambles on the Liberal side. This is what they're down to now. People are being mean to Justin Trudeau. What is that really a selling point? Okay, it's politics. Okay, if you want a friend, get a dog. But how many times in the run up to the election and over the last year, because Aaron O'Toole's been the leader for about a year, how many times did we talk about it on our show? Think of all the political panels and everything that we've done, right? What's wrong with the Conservative Party these days? What's the deal with Aaron O'Toole? He can't get any traction. He's failed to launch. He's not catching on. Did they pick the wrong guy? I did a whole show. Did they pick the wrong guy? Lowest polling number since the creation of the modern Conservative Party, below 30%. How can this be happening? Just a few months ago, I said, it's on tape. I was wondering out loud if the Conservative Party would even survive this election campaign, or whether the result would be so bad, the whole thing would be blown up. Civil war again. Knives out for the leader again. Wexit movement with new life. People's Party gains new momentum. And the Conservative Party, whatever's left, would be basically the old Progressive Conservative Party. Make a go of it east of Manitoba. That is how low and real my expectations were for the Conservatives going into this election. I wondered about the viability of the party as a national alternative, a legitimate government in waiting, and a serious opponent for the Liberals. But so far, I've been wrong. I'm perfectly fine with being wrong. I just wonder how cool you are with this obvious move to the center, maybe even in some cases the center left for this party. Okay, this is the Rob Snow Show. That's my question for you here on the Talk Back Hour as our election coverage continues at 750-1310. This is City News.
This hour of the Rob.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
I actually think, and I said this during my Snow and 60 commentary yesterday, I actually think the whole center, the political center in Canada, has moved more to the left. I called it the hard left turn. That the center has shifted way out to the left coming out of this pandemic. The entire dogmas have been re-examined, and the center's moved. I don't think Stephen Harper could get elected right now. I don't think Chrétien, for example, could be pitching people on deficit control or reining in the debt by doing a massive round of layoffs of public servants, like 75,000 public servants, right? I don't think you could get public buy-in for restraint like that right now. Not right now, anyway. I think the whole political center of the country has moved to the left, and if you're a political party, you want to win, you have to carve your spot in the center, and that's what O'Toole and his team are trying to do. And maybe it's paying off, but what do you think about it? What do you think about the direction Aaron O'Toole has taken this party? Too mushy for you? Too middle of the road? Liberal light? Or a breath of fresh air? Is he like a canister of Febreze, ladies and gentlemen? Is it a more appealing Conservative Party for you? Taking the hard edges off. David Hurley said in his podcast this week, he's taken the hard edges off. The stuff that turned people off in 2015 and 2019, he's taking the edges off of that stuff. Be curious what you think. Bill in Ottawa, you're on City News. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Rob. Yeah, I think that Aaron O'Toole is just being pragmatic at the moment.
Pragmatic, okay.
Yeah, I think that the real problem here was the Liberals were wholly unprepared to campaign. And I think that they didn't adequately consider the possibility that by calling an election with nothing to offer, they're giving the public an opportunity to get rid of them, and maybe the public are considering just doing that.
All right, Bill. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Have a good day.
Yep, you too. You too, sir. 750-1310. Still some time to take your calls. Albert is in Canada this morning. Albert, go ahead, Albert.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, sir. What do you think of the job he's doing here, Albert?
I think he's doing a great job. I think this man's, and I use the word man highly, is well-rounded. He's got his boots on the ground.
Yep.
He's a good listener.
Okay.
He showed his humanitarian side yesterday when he said he'd get rid of the dog and cat issues with the farms that shouldn't be out there selling those animals. And as much as I'd like to see Aaron and Justin in a ring, I think where Aaron will shine and the knockout punch will be next week when he gets on stage and people get to listen to him. And I think he's going to come out very strong in the debate.
Yeah.
And I think the best is yet to come with this guy.
The best is yet to come. Okay.
That's right.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. What a
Bye-bye.
difference some good polling numbers can make. It's amazing. I don't know. I was looking at some of the promises in the platform from the Conservatives. For example, taxes, which is like, I'll cut your taxes, kind of like motherhood and apple pie thing for the Conservatives, right? For someone like me, middle-class guy, mortgage to pay. What's in it for me? Because it's all about me, GST holiday when I do Christmas shopping in December is kind of like low-hanging fruit, but it's even kind of gimmicky, but I guess I'll take it. His approach is more about trying to create business conditions by way of tax credits, tax breaks, trying to lure investment here, promote the innovation economy, the development of domestic technology here in Canada. That's fine. But there's no classic, I will cut your taxes or anything like that, other than save the GST in the run-up to Christmas. I think the most interesting move from O'Toole and his entire economic package is the big-time outreach to rank-and-file union members. That's the obvious grow the tent plan there. So what if union bosses hate Conservatives? Go after those rank-and-file union members. So he's pitching things like having a worker representative on the board of directors for federally regulated corporations. He says he would change the labor code to help unions organize, especially in companies that have a history of anti-labor activities. Help unions organize. The Conservative leader is saying that. Government benefits for gig workers. I like that he's pro-pipeline, of course. Even Seamus O'Regan, the Liberal Natural Resources Minister, is he's not entirely anti-pipeline. But on debt and deficit, there's nothing more than we'll try and balance the budget in 10 years. Stephen, Ottawa, you're on City News. Stephen.
Yeah, I wasn't going to call in, Rob, but I just heard the last 8 callers, and they just sound like the same person.
Right.
I just want to reiterate some of the points that you made, because you hit the nail on the head with the fact that he's betrayed the base at the beginning of his leadership, with the fact that
I'm True Blue, and now I'm not True Blue anymore.
He's obviously not. That alienates a whole large percentage of people in the Conservative Party who really, to be honest, feel like they don't have a voice right now. If you're against abortion or you're against euthanasia, there's a lot of issues right now at play, and who's the voice for that? And you mentioned that the same thing happened in Ontario. Well, why would someone who's a Christian conservative, or someone who's just wants to take someone at their word, even with the carbon tax, why would they vote for him?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, trust issue, right?
For sure.
Yeah, you fooled me once. You fooled me once. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, fair enough point. We'll wrap it up there. What's in here that screams, hey, big C conservative? Something that's decidedly right of the political spectrum. So, smaller government, lower taxes, hawkish foreign policy, strong military, heck, even, to the previous call, so-called social issues or family values issues, if you want. Hard to find in Aaron O'Toole's Conservative Party of Canada. Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper, after the news on City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, August 31st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 21 degrees. It does feel like 25 with the humidity. 525 more cases today of COVID-19 in Ontario. The province also reporting 5 more deaths. However, 3 of those deaths were from more than 2 months ago due to a data cleanup. Now, 10 of these new cases today are in Ottawa, Eastern Ontario, 3 new cases. No new cases in either Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, or the Renfrew County Health Unit. Case numbers come from over 19,600 tests that were done. The positive rate is at 3.1%. Businesses in Ottawa facing an uphill battle. On to the green, they're desperate in need of cash to pay for things like rent and labor. They're also in need of more employees and a reform of commercial insurance premiums.
Commercial insurance rates have just gone through the roof to the point where some restaurants can't even get a renewal. Some laws around commercial bankruptcy, about how that impact, a lot of businesses have put personal guarantees on leases and on loans, and now are facing this awful choice of, do I take that debt on personally?
Now, the chair of the Ottawa Coalition of BIAs tells City News that many have taken on an average of $80,000 to $100,000 worth of debt and are still fighting things like supply chain issues. Mark Kolusky adds that the constant threat of the Delta variant is not helping consumer confidence and doesn't expect things to be back to pre-pandemic levels, at least for another year. City News time 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A gorgeous day for the last day of August. Sun and cloud, the wind out of the west-northwest, a high near 26 degrees. Tonight, mainly clear and 12, and tomorrow, sunshine with a high about 25 degrees. For today, just a slight chance of a shower, sun and cloud, high 26.
And right now, 21 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. It does feel like 25. Day 17 of the federal election campaign has party leaders focusing on mental health and housing. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with more.
Speaking from a family's backyard in an Ottawa community, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau making a big-ticket promise to help people with mental health issues following the pandemic.
A Liberal government will invest almost $6.5 billion for mental health services across the country. And we'll make this investment through a brand new, dedicated Canada Mental Health Transfer to provinces and territories.
Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is also in Ottawa for an announcement today, but he may face questions about comments he made in a video shot last year, but making the rounds on social media now, where O'Toole is speaking to supporters and targets the Minister for Women and Gender Equity.
Your MP is a disgrace, and she's a fraud as well.
Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh set to make a promise about housing in Coquitlam, BC, and Green Party leader Annamie Paul holding an event in Toronto. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time 11:03. Immigration Minister Marco Mendicino says Canada continues to process visa applications from at-risk Afghan nationals hoping to get out of that country despite the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Kabul. Mendicino also faced pointed questions today about reports of changing document requirements for Afghans trying to flee. The minister acknowledged the Taliban is not making the exit easy.
The Taliban have been moving the goalposts on what is expected at those checkpoints, and we want to be absolutely clear and agile that they have whatever language and documentation that is necessary.
Now, Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau says an estimated 1,250 Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or family members are still in Afghanistan. There are 5,000 people who were taken out on American flights, and they will eventually come to Canada. Right now, they're in other countries in either the Middle East or Europe undergoing processing. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This has been a lengthy news conference from Mr. Trudeau today. We will take some of it right now. He's in Ottawa.
To counter the opioid.
He was introduced today by, in part, by Jenna Sudds, the former, the city councillor on leave right now from city council, running in Carleton, one of the close races and one of the races to watch on election night. Let's listen to a little bit of Mr. Trudeau here.
The government has done over the past 6 years, and as you point out, David, there is much more to do. Nous reconnaissons à quel point.
As you heard from our parliamentary correspondent Cormac McSweeney,
that we have to do everything we can.
Thank you, David. The big announcement today: $6.5 billion for mental health services in Canada to be distributed through a new mental health transfer to provinces and territories. So that's from Mr. Trudeau today, but still no platform. All of these days into the campaign as we welcome back syndicated columnist. You read him in Loonie Politics, Troy Media, National Post, former speechwriter for a guy named Stephen Harper. Michael Taube is back on the Rob Snow Show, and good morning.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
How do you think this race is shaping up here? What do you think of it so far?
Well, it's been pretty fascinating in the sense that, as you can see in several polls, including Ecos, Main Street, and even now it's starting to grow in Nanos research, the Conservatives have huge momentum, which is not earth-shaking, but the momentum has actually really shifted to the point where the distance or the gap between the Conservatives and the Liberals is growing in certain polls and is developing in others. But also interesting at the same time is the gap between the Liberals and the NDP, who are currently in third, is narrowing. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to watch over the next week or two if this momentum continues. But thus far, as I've said to you before, O'Toole and the Conservatives have just had sharp messaging. They've been on point, good policies, good ideas. You know, they haven't had wild controversies, huge pitfalls to deal with. You know, a few things here and there, which I'm sure we'll talk about because that's just part of the nature of running an election.
Yep.
But overall, just pristine movement in the right direction, which is the forward direction or trying to actually achieve government. And as you pointed out correctly, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, more than 2 weeks in, still have no platform.
Okay. Are you surprised by the, to use your word, sharpness of the Conservative campaign? Has taken you by surprise at all?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, we had sharp messaging when I worked for my old friend and boss, Stephen Harper. There were many elections where we actually did that. The problem has been that since about 2015, the messaging hasn't been as sharp, which is basically, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that attribute to it. Part of it is when you're sitting in opposition, you're looking for any opportunity you can to get yourself noticed. And aside from waving hysterically in the corner, you've got to try to push things out as best you can. That's a difficult task. Plus, as well, there have also been, well, we saw issues during certainly Andrew Scheer's leadership. Nice guy overall, known him for years, decent fellow, family man, etc. But the problem was he was never able to balance fiscal and social conservatism properly. So the messaging that came out of his office and came out of his campaign during 2019 really wasn't sharp at all. O'Toole's has been the exact opposite. O'Toole has been on point literally since the first day, and that's an impressive switch. So I'm not surprised, but I'm obviously pleasantly surprised at the same time.
Would you say he was on the social issues? Has he been? Is it because he's been proactive? Would you say that's?
Yeah.
You know, he took the initiative to say, "Look, I just want it out there. I'm pro-choice."
Yeah.
Right.
He's been proactive, but he's also a moderate on social issues. So he's been able to explain his positions more easily than, say, Andrew Scheer did. Andrew Scheer could have run, is a fiscal and social conservative, and he could have run that way. But all he had to do was basically craft some messaging around the line that I hold my point of view and party members hold disparate point of view. Some of them that are similar to mine, some of that are different. He was never able to get that across. Erin O'Toole has not only been able to get it across, he's actually handled it in such a pleasant demeanor that people look at his ideas and realize that they seem to be in line with what most Canadian voters believe in. Again, fiscally conservative and moderate on the social side, maybe a social centrist, if you want to call him that.
Okay,
and yes, issues like abortion, euthanasia, and other issues are just not obviously popping up because A, he's very moderate on them, and B, he's not making a big issue or a big deal out of them. And I think that's what Canadian voters, anyways, come September 20th, want to see.
Okay. Let's talk about Cheryl Gallant.
Sure.
Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, all she does is win.
Right? It's true.
She's, I called her an outsider, even in her own party. But she wins and wins big. What do you do if you're Erin O'Toole now, because she goes back to the Canadian Alliance days. But what do you do with someone like Cheryl Gallant?
She does go back to the Canadian Alliance days, and I met her in the Canadian Alliance days, and she's a very nice woman on a personal basis. She holds positions that may match some of what the party membership believes in, but it's also opposite in others. She wins her riding handily. She's never had any trouble with it. She's extremely popular there. She's been able to cultivate her local base, and many of her residents like her and trust her. The controversial aspect of it, this is the theory of having a big tent, and all political parties struggle with it from time to time. When you have a big tent, you don't have a series of automatons running with you who are programmed to be exactly like the leader and exactly like the narrative or the direction the political party is following. You're going to have people who have different points of view. And in the conservative movement in Canada, we have always respected that. Yes, Cheryl Gallant obviously is very forceful in her positions, but it's different having your own established positions versus going into business for yourself. And Cheryl Gallant has never done that. She has expressed her own point of view, recognizing full well that she is not the leader of the party, has never been the leader of the party, will likely never be the leader of the party, but she is entitled to, in a world or in a country that believes, at least in theory, in free speech and intellectual discourse, she is allowed to hold those points of view, no matter how controversial they are to other people.
Yeah, it's like herding cats being the leader of the Conservative Party, isn't it? I mean, you have...
They all suffer with it, Rob.
Yeah, you have the old kind of traditional, say, what I would call Eastern Canadian red Tories. You have, and then you have every manner of Conservatives under the sun. I mean, you have, you have Mike Harris, common sense revolution Conservatives. You have more nationalist Conservatives in Quebec. The further west you move, you get into more maybe of a populist Conservative brand. In British Columbia, you have Conservatives who actually call themselves Liberals. So I mean, it's like all over the place, right? And there are parts of the country that are very much a Bible Belt, like the area of the country where Sam Oosterhoff lives, for example. You have to. If you're the leader, you're trying to juggle all of this stuff.
Well, of course, but you're absolutely right. There are many different points of view and values in the Conservative Party or in the big tent of the Conservative Party, but the Liberals have had to deal with it. The NDP have had to deal with it. The Greens, in their own way, have to deal with it because not everyone thinks alike, which is not surprising because in life, no one thinks alike on every issue. But yes, obviously, as a Conservative leader, you have many different camps that you have to ensure not only stay under the big tent or the big tent philosophy, but are also heard, or at least believe that they're being heard to some extent, even if they know that some of their pet issues are not necessarily going to be discussed as much. Like, for example, there are social conservatives there who realize that there are obviously Conservative Party members, MPs, and leaders who value their opinion, but they also recognize that fiscal conservative issues are what win elections and what wins the day overall, and that's what has to be emphasized more than the other side. So it's a balancing act, but again, when you become a party leader, whether it be Erin O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, Stephen Harper, whatnot, this is what you have to do. I mean, not everything is going to be smooth sailing every day of the week. Sometimes you have to ensure that the bridges are strong as possible, at least the political bridges are, and that you don't destroy them too often, because if you do, you cause dissension within the ranks, as we saw in the old days of the Canadian Alliance and the whole DRC fiasco that happened for a while under Stockwell Day. We don't want to go back to those times, and we certainly don't want to have another Reform Party / progressive conservative split, which spent, basically put us 17 years in the political wilderness during that time. We want to ensure that things are divided properly and that everyone has their say, even if the first issues or the first series of issues that are of most importance may not necessarily mesh with what some of the membership believes in. But again, it's a balancing act.
Okay. These protesters that have been following Trudeau around. There is this line of thinking that it's a gift for the Liberal campaign. Do you think these protesters really helped Trudeau?
No, they don't.
No?
I mean,
Okay.
the protesters are, obviously they hold their own position and their own views and values. And, all the protesters also cannot be defined under one particular ideology. Some of them are just simply opponents to Justin Trudeau, of which we know, Rob, there are many. But others have a more specific agenda where they're either anti-maskers, anti-mandatory vaccine passport, or a whole combination thereof. But does it help? Look, whenever you speak out and it's attributed to a particular political party, and generally speaking, these protesters are either linked to the Conservatives or in certain cases are supporters of the Conservatives or volunteers on certain campaigns, no, it's not beneficial to have them come out and say that. But as long as Erin O'Toole continues to do what he's been doing thus far, which is to condemn actions like that, similar to what we saw in Bolton, Ontario, where they shut the whole thing down, and Mr. O'Toole was out right away condemning what they had done, saying this is not what our party believes in, this is not how our Canada operates, et cetera, et cetera. That's the right thing you have to do. You have to basically allow free speech, sort of like we were talking about before, for those who oppose certain things, but ensure that the fine line between their point of view and the party's point of view, and obviously the leader's point of view, is clearly established.
Okay, finally this morning, a lot of people are saying, Trudeau's inevitably going to make this pitch to the NDP supporters, hey, you have to vote for us to stop the Conservatives. It's a classic move, right? Yeah. Would it make sense for O'Toole to make the same sort of appeal to PPC or Maverick supporters, vote for me to stop Trudeau, or are they just too entrenched? What do you think? The PPC, Maverick?
It may matter based on the way polling is right now, unless O'Toole over the next week or two suddenly marches off to a huge lead. It is possible that you could be looking at, let's say, theoretically, we don't know what's going to happen, but if on hypothetically on September 20th, if Erin O'Toole wins the election but comes a little bit short or a little shy of a majority, some people will point out, well, why didn't you try to bring in those additional elements in the grand scheme of things, that being PPC voters and supporters and Maverick voters and supporters. But again, a lot of it will depend upon what their overall numbers are. Right now, the PPC is obviously polling fairly well in most opinion polls that I've seen, which you have to take with a grain of salt, but it establishes something that's going on. If the PPC is sitting around 4 to 5.5% overall, that's obviously enough, depending on where they're based and which ridings they're located in, that to actually help you a little bit. Maverick is obviously a bit of a difficulty in certain Western provinces and certain Western ridings, but their overall support is low enough that I'm not really sure that's going to become a big issue. But look, in the end, ultimately, a lot of people will do the classic move, and you said it yourself. Trudeau, if he's way behind, will try to make the pitch to NDP supporters to come on his side to stop the Conservatives. And I wouldn't be surprised if O'Toole spoke to, say, middle-of-the-road PPC supporters, Maverick supporters, who obviously do exist, and say to them, look, I know you're not happy with everything we represent, but by and large, we basically think alike on a lot of issues about taxes, the size of government, family, etc. Come with me, and let's try to get a majority. So I could see it happening, but again, it depends where they're at that point in time when everyone goes to the polls on September 20th.
It's fun to watch. Thank you, Michael, for this week. We'll talk soon.
You bet. My pleasure.
Bye-bye, Michael Taube, syndicated columnist. 11:19, Doug Porter from the economics team at the Bank of Montreal on today's surprising economic data with the economy flatlining in the second quarter. A surprise for many in the investment community. That's coming right up. This is City News.
It started out with a small outdoor booth in what was called Artist Alley, which is actually the area just outside our store on William Street, where for a couple of years we sold our jewelry directly on the street. And then we slowly evolved to having an indoor location in this building, 55 Borrowed Market Square, We then moved to another location in Place de Ville, and then moved back down here on Dalhousie Street at Irrigere in the 90s, and then back into this building again in 2000 as a collection. I do a collection of jewelry called Cirque that's mainly beaded work with a combination of semi-precious and vintage beads. And then she does a hat collection called Fanfreluche that's all cut and sewn hats in a variety of fabrics and for all of the seasons of the year. We've curated and sourced the artisans that we represent in a lot of different ways over the years since it's been, since 1985. Some people come to us since we're known, and other artisans that we represent might recommend that they come and see us. Some people we find at craft shows, or we see their work, somebody wears it in, and we go and track it down and bring it. And then some people, interestingly, are with us in one medium, and then sometimes they evolve to another. They're all Canadian and mainly local. With the roughly 50 people that we have, I'd say more than half of those are Ottawa-Gatineau, and then the rest are from other cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. If you can afford it, go to a small business and spend some money. It's lovely when you come in and, give me a pep talk and tell me how much you love this place and you've been coming here for years. But if you can afford it, please spend some money too, because all the pep talks in the world are not going to pay my rent, which is still full rent even when we're closed. Then secondly, if you can't afford to spend money, follow the businesses that you want to support on social media. Go to their Instagram, go to their Facebook, follow their Twitter, and then retweet, share their Facebook page, like and comment. Because if you can't afford to, as many of us can't right now, to do extra expenditures, doing all of those little things like that will raise the visibility of those small businesses, and hopefully for them result in some online or curbside or other business for them.
Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
GDP report out today, second quarter, so it is looking in the rearview mirror. I mean, tomorrow is the first day of September, but it was weaker than expected. It seems to be a housing story. It's a great pleasure once more to be joined here on the Rob Snow Show. From the Bank of Montreal Economics Department, Doug Porter, Chief Economist, Managing Director, BMO Financial Group. Good morning once more.
Good morning, Rob.
What'd you think of the number?
No, I was shocked, quite frankly. And, if we step back for a minute, if we go back to the start of the quarter, had you told me that Ontario was going to be pretty much shut down for the spring and we were going to face all kinds of supply issues globally on the auto side, I don't think I'd be that surprised that the economy drifted a little bit lower in the second quarter. But why this is such a surprise is just a month ago, Statistics Canada gave us an early estimate for the quarter where they thought the economy grew by about 2.5%. And lo and behold, it actually contracted a little bit in the second quarter. Again, not that surprising given the restrictions that we were dealing with.
Yes.
But it did come out of left field. Now, the other thing I'll add very quickly is equally surprising and equally disappointing is the early estimate for July is another decline. This is a month where, many areas of the economy and country were pretty much open for business, and we had a pullback in the activity in July, and that is a disappointment.
Okay. I have the release in front of me, and one of the headlines in it is this: housing investment reshapes the economy. It's a pretty bold statement. What do you think of it?
Oh, absolutely. Housing, there are a lot of moving parts, no doubt about it, to the economy this year and in the last couple months or so, but definitely one of the headline stories is just the wildness we've seen in housing markets, of course, which pretty much everyone has lived through. In a very simple way, I would say we just had stratospheric activity in the first quarter of the year, and we couldn't stay in the stratosphere, and things moderate a bit on the sales side in the second quarter, and that was one of the other reasons why the economy contracted in the second quarter. But even with that pullback in sales activity in the quarter, we're still dealing with an outsized performance by the residential sector. It still weighs in at about 10% of the economy, which is much, much bigger than in the recent past or almost any other economy in the world.
Okay. Is it right now housing and everything to do with housing? As StatsCan calls it, all costs associated with the transfer of a residential asset from one to another. I love the way they talk. Is it the most important industry in Canada right now, housing? That's
debatable.
Okay, the most influential.
Yeah, I think in terms of acting as a swing factor for the economy, I would say yes. It's debatable whether it's the single most important in a sector, but it is definitely, it will have the biggest effect in terms of quarter to quarter, month to month growth. I think that is fair.
Okay. Look, here in Ontario, the most important industry traditionally is everything to do with autos, auto sector, auto parts. These supply chain disruptions and the microchip shortage, what's that doing to our economy, Doug?
Nothing good, both on the supply and the spending side, because auto sales have actually been very weak in the last couple months, and it's not because of a lack of demand. It's just, it's like a Soviet supermarket. There's nothing on the shelves. But if we can't build the cars, we can't sell them. And, that's hurting both output and it's hurting spending. And I think that is a bit of an underplayed story in terms of why the economy, is coming in a little bit flat, a little bit weaker than what many economists had hoped for or expected earlier this year. If we go back as recently as April when the federal budget came out, that budget was based on what we thought was a cautious estimate of growth of a little bit less than 6%. Well, now as of today, we think the economy is going to do well to hit 5% growth this year after, a 5% decline last year.
Okay. Finally, savings rate, 14.2%, the fifth consecutive quarter with a double-digit savings rate. Can you put this in some kind of historical perspective for us?
So we have seen numbers higher than 14% of you all the way back to the early 80s when interest rates were almost 20% and the unemployment rate was double digits, and people were very scared. Dealing with high inflation, we had savings rates of this ilk or even higher. But in recent history, we've not seen anything like it. That is, before the pandemic, the savings rate was close to 1% to 2% for the economy as a whole. So I think the main point here is, any weakness we're seeing in the economy is not because people don't have, the will to spend. They just don't have the means. They don't have the ability. They can't spend.
Right.
Either, as I said, the product isn't on the shelves or, you can't go to a restaurant, you can't travel. Or you
all
can't.
Dressed up and no place to go.
Exactly. So it's not because consumers aren't able or, don't have the means to spend. They just don't have the ability.
Okay. Thank you, Doug Porter. Great to hear from you. Chief Economist, BMO Financial Group. Warren Smokey Thomas is president of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, OPSEU, and he's my guest after the news on City News.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley, this is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Tuesday, the 31st of August. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, partly cloudy, 22 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. Two of the three main party leaders are in the Ottawa Valley today. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau's in Canada, promising almost $6.5 billion for mental health services. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is in Ottawa for a financial announcement downtown at the Westin. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh makes a housing announcement in BC, while Green Party leader Annamie Paul holds an event in Toronto. Canada's foreign minister says nearly 1,250 Canadian citizens or landed immigrants are still stranded in Afghanistan following the withdrawal of U.S. and allied forces from that country. Mark Garneau says those people, as well as at-risk Afghan nationals, should shelter in place for now until Canada can get assurances from the Taliban of safe passage out of Afghanistan. COVID-19 numbers today, 525 new cases in Ontario. That's fewer than the last couple of days. The province also reporting 5 more deaths, but 3 of those happened more than 2 months ago. Ottawa has 10 new cases today, according to the province. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit 3. No new cases reported by the province in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, nor Renfrew counties. Updated local numbers come this afternoon. Ottawa's largest school board debates mandatory vaccines for staff and volunteers tonight. This debate ended up rescheduled when last week's Ottawa Carleton District School Board meeting ran long and trustees ran out of time. City News Time 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail tweeted this morning the update on what's going on with the vaccine passport. Supposed to hear something from the Ford government tomorrow. Those were the reports. Tomorrow would be the day that they come out and announce this is our plan for the vaccine passport in the province of Ontario. Laura Stone tweeted, Ford and senior team sent back health vax passport proposal yesterday. It was deemed not ready, inconsistent, and according to one source, again, this is a source speaking to the Globe and Mail's Laura Stone, inconsistent, according to one source, so far-reaching, getting redone, Cabinet may see today. It's also possible this will be more of a guidance document than a legal imperative, all up for discussion still. So that was making its way around the Twitter sphere this morning on the latest on the vaccine passport. So Warren Smokey Thomas joins me. He's the president of OPSEU, the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, long time no talk. Great to get caught up.
Yes.
So the hot issue is the vaccine passport. What do we need it? What do you think?
Yes. Well, what I would have preferred to see would be one that's nationwide. If the feds and the provinces could have come to an agreement, but failing that, I think we need something. Businesses are certainly free and able, in my view, and actually responsible to keep their employees and customers safe. So I support a business's right to say, if you can't prove you're vaccinated, you're not going to this concert or you're not going to eat here. I actually support that. Some people don't. But I think a it's a vaccine passport, so proof of vaccination is, I think, a reasonable solution and a reasonable intrusion on what some might consider their rights to a very, very serious health crisis and with, very, very complicated issues. So while my union, we don't actually have a hard, fast policy on vaccine passports yet, but on a personal level, I do support them.
Okay, but you're as a union, you don't have an official policy.
No, not yet. We debated in July and again in August. We debated mandatory vaccines.
Yes.
And when I asked about vaccine passports, it was getting late in the day. But the majority of my board seemed to be not opposed, and some seemed to think it was a good idea. So I think, generally speaking, it's one more measure to try and keep people safe and beat this pandemic, get this thing beat into submission so we can get back to whatever normal is going to be.
Sure. Okay. So you have, as a union, debated mandatory vaccines.
Yes.
Okay. Who came out on top there? What side won there with OPSEU?
Well, it's a complicated issue.
Okay.
Myself and two other board members would have liked to have seen it strengthened a bit more, leaning toward mandatory, but the 18 board members didn't agree with that. But we did come up with a position, and it's, we tried to capture the sentiments of the leadership and what we've been hearing from the workplaces. So in essence, what we're really committed to is following the advice and the direction of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the science table. And we've tried to do that all along. So whatever those two bodies come out with as a union, we would support that. And then when it comes to mandatory vaccine policy, we represent, we bargain them over 700 contracts and represent, about that many employer groups. So it's coming in. The people, employers are coming out with their own policies, and
yes.
We're not quite sure how that's all going to shake out yet, because it really is vaccines are a very divisive issue in some parts of Ontario and indeed the world. But so what I would like is for the government, through the Ministry of Labor, to try and get the big unions together with some big employers, and can we come up with some principles around mandatory vaccine policy?
Yeah.
And then we might avoid years of litigation. We might avoid a lot of resentment and hostilities in the workplaces. We might avoid some employers and managers using it for...
Well, I don't have to tell you, Smokey, this was a contentious issue, mandating shots, for example, long before COVID even came along. I can remember the nurses' union... it went to arbitration twice over flu shots and mandatory flu shots.
Yeah,
and won, by the way, and won.
And they did, but the other side of that, though, as a result, is there are in their collective agreement, and indeed some collective agreements, if you don't get the flu shot and you happen to get sick or there's a flu outbreak, you're going to either get transferred, or if it's really bad, you're not going to get to work. So people might say, I have the right to refuse, but there can be consequences for refusing, right?
So do you think ultimately that this is going to have to work its way into the language of collective agreements? You're going to have unions and employers come to terms on vaccination in the workplace?
Yes, I do, and I look forward to some big rounds of bargaining to try to hammer out some language, because it's far more complicated, I think, than maybe some people realize. Mm-hmm. So if you have a legitimate medical reason, like say you're severely allergic to one of the ingredients in the vaccine, right? There's a carrier ingredient, like there's some stuff in there you can be allergic to, or you have a history of really negative reactions to vaccines. Well, the employer in the law has a thing that's called duty to accommodate. So what does that look like? What's their responsibility to accommodate?
Sure.
And what do you do with people that simply refuse to get vaccinated on religious grounds? That's a very narrow scope in the human rights code, right? But there are people that have that legitimate belief, the lifelong belief, their religion says you don't take
exactly.
vaccines.
Yeah, sure.
So these are going to be questions that either we can get together as union and employers and try to resolve, or we're going to have years of litigation, and perhaps nobody will be happy with the outcome. That quite often happens in arbitrations.
Yeah.
Each side goes, well, dang, I didn't get everything I wanted, right? So
it's very insightful, your take on it, Smokey, because, for example, there's a lot of people who want to see a tough line taken here, and there are a lot of politicians who are willing to accommodate people saying, well, for example, Premier Legault saying, well, if you're not fully vaccinated by this day and you're working in healthcare, you're going to be suspended without pay. I don't know if it's really that easy.
No, well, then you already got a shortage of nursing staff, shortage of respiratory therapists, shortage of lab techs. So what do? Do you exacerbate that, or do you try and accommodate?
But but can you immediately go to that, or would there be language in a collective agreement that would say, well, actually, you have to accommodate this person? Maybe you move them into a non-patient-facing role or something like that, right?
We would assert that, but not all collective agreements. Actually, the vast majority of collective agreements probably don't provide for that. So.
Okay. So in your union for OPSEU, give us a sense of who's impacted by these vaccine mandates.
Just about every one of our members, because the vast majority are either serve the public or work in healthcare or work in congregate settings like provincial jails,
long-term care,
long-term care, you name it, right? Service
group
Ontario,
homes,
LCBO, community colleges, boards of education, municipalities where they have offices facing the public. So the vast majority of our members have, been working the front lines and lived through the pandemic, and they're all, and I would say that public opinion, and my members are generally speaking the public, given that 80% of people have had at least one shot, and I think close to that are now getting to the second shot, I think there's generally acceptance in the public and for vaccines. And I personally believe in the science myself. I'm double vaccinated. I took my shot as soon as I could get it. And I trust the science. But, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there, a lot of misinformation. And I can say one thing that might not sit well in some media circles, but every day of the week on every different channel, there's a different expert extolling their views of the world. And in my view, it confuses people. I always encourage people to go to the government website, look up the real facts, not Dr. Google or those sorts of things, right? And it's been politicized, just incredibly politicized, which is so unfortunate because if you really think about it, the left and the right have diverging views. Although they do agree on mandatory vaccines, the NDP is in favor of mandatory vaccines, and the right's not. So, So it's really, really been politicized, and that gets in the way, I think, of good public policy.
All right. Speaking of politics, I must ask you very quickly about the federal election campaign, but just one particular aspect, and that's O'Toole is certainly pitching himself as, I'm the son of an auto worker from Bowmanville, right? And he's doing big time outreach to rank and file union members. So he's pitching things like, I want to have worker representatives, I suppose like a union rep, on the board of directors of federally regulated corporations. He says he would change the labor code to actually help unions organize in companies that have a history of anti-labor activities. He's proposing giving basic workplace protections like CPP, for example, to gig workers, right? In your circle of the labor movement, when conservative leaders make these kinds of pitches, are they met with skepticism, or are you can just give us a sense of that suspicion, I suppose?
Okay, so I'll just use my own union. So the vast majority of my executive board members are NDP, right?
Yeah.
They actually have a card. I don't, and a few of us don't. I'm politically agnostic. I don't subscribe to any particular political ideology. Some people have called me a populist. I used to think it was an insult, but now I'm thinking, maybe it's a compliment. But in the labor movement, some unions are diehard liberals and some unions are diehard NDP, and their view is anybody but a Tory, and they will not look at the policies. I think O'Toole, if he was to keep those promises, he would actually do a lot of good for working people. And that's, of course, he's a politician, so the big question there is if.
Right.
And he is reaching out to working people, and and some of the things he's saying to do, the labor movement's been after for decades, for generations, and and liberals didn't do it, and I don't know, Jagmeet Singh would probably do, pretty much the same, but he's making. I'm not a political analyst, but he's making inroads. I mean, just anecdotally, you're talking to people you work with, people
Mm-hmm.
They say, well, that's a good idea, that makes sense, and they are good ideas, and they do make sense. But again, Will the public believe him? I think, from my view, the biggest issue, and I think some of the polling shows it, in this issue is trust. That's kind of like the number one issue. Can you trust any politician? And that's truly unfortunate. And I wish that we could trust them all. I mean, you have to trust in something, I think, or at least I do. And I trust the political process. I don't think that people are ever wrong. So whatever happens. But yeah, no, he's been reaching out to workers. And if he does get elected, he would be very well advised, in my view, to reach out to the Canadian Labour Congress, reach out to union leaders about some of the policies he wants to put in place, because there are some examples where they are, and Labour could certainly help him implement them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to hear you. Smokey Thomas is the president of OPSEU. Leger, the most accurate polling firm in the last federal election, has new polling data out today. We'll talk about it with the head of the company. Coming right up on City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30-odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. It's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. Running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Fresh polling data out today from Leger, which makes the claim that it was the most accurate pollster of the 2019 election. And we're joined by Executive Vice President Christian Bourque. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to hear from you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Who's winning?
Right now, the Conservatives have. They actually, for the first time in our polling since the 2019 election, are the Conservatives ahead, fully by 4 points. So 34 for the Conservatives, 30 for the Liberals, and also a +4 over 1 week for the New Democrats as well, who are now at 24.
Yeah, I was looking at that number this morning, and I thought that came across as a high watermark, and indeed it is, Mr. Bourque, a high watermark for the NDP.
For the NDP, certainly. We've seen in the past that threshold of 20% is really something that was tough for them to maintain over time. 20% is so important for them because as soon as they're below that 20%, they're in seat loss territory, most certainly in Ontario and potentially in BC as well. Now at 24, this probably means that we will see three-way races in Ontario that we did not anticipate in and around Toronto in the 905, and as well in the north of the province. The fact is that if you look at any poll, ours or anybody else's, they're all showing that 2 out of the 3 main leaders sort of have momentum behind them, and these 2 leaders are Erin O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh.
Okay. And how would you describe the trend that the Liberals are on right now?
Well, they're losing points mainly to the New Democratic Party of Canada. We're seeing is that the Conservatives are making somewhat of a breakthrough in the Atlantic provinces, pretty much where they would have been in 2011, 2015 in terms of support. So potential seat gains for the Conservatives there. The Liberals have lost a few points in Quebec as well, and which is not helping the Bloc Québécois, because really it's the Conservatives that are doing slightly better in Quebec as well. The race now is extremely tight in Ontario. 1 point lead for the Conservatives, meaning that, again, that sort of 905 area becomes sort of all up for grabs, and it was all Liberal almost in 2019. So the race is tightening up, not only nationally, but across the regions as well.
Okay. How would you describe the opinion right now that Canadians have of Justin Trudeau? Either favorability, likability, approval, whatever term you describe it, Mr. Bourque. How would you describe it right now?
Yeah, actually, the numbers are not that bad. I mean, they're sufficient to win an election, and very similar to what we found in 2019 as well. So the management of the pandemic, which a majority of Canadians say that the federal government did its job right over that period, it doesn't seem to have rubbed off on the Prime Minister himself, because his numbers are pretty much where they were in 2019. And we remember back then we said, so is Mr. Trudeau a liability to his party in the 2019 election until until Andrew Scheer basically had a very tough, if not bad, campaign back then. So things have not necessarily improved for the Prime Minister. Before the election campaign started, with Erin O'Toole being sort of the new kid on the block, his numbers were fairly low, basically out of limited or no awareness on behalf of Canadians. So the first couple of weeks of the campaign, Canadians are finally seeing him, hearing from him. And I would say a month ago, he could have walked the street anywhere in Canada and people will not turn their heads. Now they kind of know who he is. And of course, sort of that new kid on the block phenomenon has helped the Conservatives so far. Now we're entering into debate week next week. We're entering into the crunch of the campaign. Already we've seen that now the Bloc Québécois in Quebec is targeting the Conservatives and not the Liberals anymore. So now that the Conservatives are in the lead, the tone of the campaign for Mr. O'Toole may change. And it's basically up to him and his team to play with the lead they have, but it won't be easy.
Very interesting. One of the questions that you asked is a real hot button issue in the campaign over the last week or so, and that's the so-called two-tiered healthcare. According to your most recent public opinion research, what is the prevailing opinion on the use of so-called private healthcare in Canada? What did you find out?
We still have to ask more questions because the result that we got is actually kind of intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
3 out of 4 Canadians say, I can do with some private health care. I can handle that. However, if you look publicly, most people, are basically saying we need to protect and defend our, a universal healthcare system that is one of the core values of being Canadian. It's certainly the first thing we say to Americans. We have free and accessible healthcare. But what we are seeing now is sort of Canadians are open to some form of a hybrid model that they can actually can be comfortable with. And I believe this is somewhat good news for the Conservatives because a lot of pundits were saying, well, that's where the Conservative platform is weak. Canadians will not stand up for some form of privatization of healthcare. But apparently they're telling us they're somewhat
That's not what they're telling you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you offered them this choice. I am fine with private clinics operating in my province so long as there continue to be universal access to quality care at no cost available to all Canadians. 71% agreed with that statement out of your sample, right?
Yeah. And so that leaves a very short majority who are basically totally opposed to the idea of private health care. So it does give the Conservatives some wiggle room. I think attacks that will be coming and have been coming from the NDP are quite understandable because that last portion of Canadians totally opposed to private health care tends to vote for the NDP. But it sort of puts the Liberals at a position where attacking the Conservatives on this is not as simple as maybe they would have thought prior to these results. And we were quite surprised. I expected Canadians to be divided on that issue. And that's not what we got as a result.
Mr. Bourque, I thank you for your time this morning.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Christian Bourque is the Executive Vice President of Leger. That's it for the Rob Snow Show. Sam LaPrade is standing by right after the news on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. The Rob.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
$20. Hi, I'm Maggie. Come